Why is Chris Olave a big-time play this week in fantasy football? We break it down right here and right now as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football, wide receiver, tight end rankings coming at you.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in the league. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day. We are here on a Thursday. That means we're going to break down the wide receiver and tight end rankings. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie, Iyer. And when I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL betting and fantasy for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher at NFL Network and fantasy analyst at NFL.com. Vinnie, you didn't say your fantasy football intro, and that makes me sad because I want to hear it every morning.
I think I was worried about my voice this morning. It's been pretty hectic here, trying to get kids ruffling up for bed. I had to do it by myself this morning, so it's a little rough. But we will bring it back tomorrow. I will promise you that. I think my voice is still okay today, so I'm okay with that. But yeah, I was just a little bit of midweek blues here, but we do have a pretty good Thursday night game, hopefully for fantasy, with the Packers and Lions, and it is my favorite day of the week, Michelle, so we know that. I like to break down the wide receivers because there's so many questions about wide receivers. We're a running back. Sometimes you're stuck with a guy you had got. Quarterback, you might just have a top 7 or 8 option where you're going with. But here, you really have to make some tough decisions all across the board with emerging guys and some fading guys. So one guy I said at the top that we'll say that we like on Locked On Fantasy Football is Chris Olave this week. So I really think that he can have a big game. And the other thing that is going on here, the Bucks, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, both these guys are hurt. These are their 2 top corners in this matchup. On the other side, we may not like Mike Evans as much this week. He has historically struggled against the Saints, specifically Marshawn Lattimore. So we'll start there with Olave and Evans in that same game, Michelle.
Yeah, we both have Chris Olave as our wide receiver 8. He's been great for fantasy, and I think the whole question mark here is, are we worried about Derek Carr not being there and Jameis Winston coming in? But I mean, Chris Olave has played with Jameis Winston last year. He put up really good production with him in the short 3 games. He was averaging actually almost 90 receiving yards per game in the 3 games he played with Winston, and that was right to start his career, like his 3 first games in the NFL. And then last week, we saw Jameis Winston come in, give him 5 targets. He had 46 yards with Winston. So I'm not worried about the quarterback whatsoever. And I think in this matchup, they're going to have to throw more than they run. So I love Chris Olave this week, as we do every week.
Yeah, you definitely bump him up now in the overall picture, right? I mean, he's delivered in every game so far this season. He's been very consistent. That's what we like. We'd like some touchdowns to come, but it'll probably come here soon. Now, Evans, we have him a little bit lower this week. I haven't dropped all the way down to wide receiver 23, despite his really hot start as wide receiver 1. You like him as also a kind of a wide receiver 2, middling to where he's not producing the same that we've seen definitely in the first 3 weeks, which he's been outstanding in. But Lattimore, I don't know. I think part of it is physical. Part of it, I think, is mental. I think Lattimore really gets into Mike Evans' head in this matchup. I still think he has a shot to score a touchdown, and that's where he's gotten his mark in this game in the past. But, yeah, I don't expect a big yardage game from him in this one.
Yeah, Marshawn Lattimore has just really shut down Mike Evans. I mean, every game, you have to go back to like 2018 to find Mike Evans having a good game against the Saints. And it's a totally different situation, right, with a new quarterback. And I do feel like Baker Mayfield has that strong connection with Mike Evans. But you saw Baker kind of come back to reality last week. And I don't think this is going to be an easy matchup for him either. So, I still have Mike Evans as my wide receiver 17. He can have a big play. Like, it could still happen. But just to warn people, I mean, it's been like 5 points every time Mike Evans has to go up against Marshawn Lattimore. So it could be an ugly game for him.
Yeah, just be prepared for that. I mean, one guy that was putting up some really ugly games here, and we drafted him in a lot of leagues as the second wide receiver behind Justin Jefferson was Jamar Chase. He was doing absolutely nothing. And then the Bengals decided to just throw him a lot of short passes there against the Rams. So he racked up a lot of points doing that, getting 8, 9, 10 yards a catch, and gave us the big day in the end. And I'm really high on him this week. I know you are this week. I think he's going to play more like that player. I have him at number 2. You have him there at number 6. So definitely a very high week for him. You have T. Higgins a little bit higher than me this week, but part of it is T is just not playing well. He's dropping a lot of balls, and he was a 0 in week 1. I have him down at 20. You're not too far above me, Michelle, at 15, but I do like the matchup, and we know this Titans secondary just giving up points in bunches to wide receivers.
Deshaun Watson just had a good day against the
Yeah.
Titans secondary. Like everyone's going to look great against the secondary. Yes, Jamar Chase came through last week. He got 15 targets. Like it is kind of concerning to see the 11.8 yards per reception since the rookie year. Those yards per reception has really come down. So you'd like to see him getting those deeper plays again, but you're going to take 12 receptions for 141 yards. I mean, you're going to love that, right? And I think he has another massive game against the secondary. And T. Higgins should as well. I know it's been a bad year for him so far, but do you know that he has the same number of targets as Mike Evans? He has more targets than Amon-Ra St. Brown this year. He has 8+ targets in every game. Like, he should be getting it done. The issue is he has 10 total receptions on the season because
his hands of stone this year.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. But with these targets, I do think he's a good player, right? He's going to come back to life. And this secondary, he should get if he gets 8 targets again, I do think he comes down with a really nice game.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, I would worry if he doesn't destroy this matchup, at least come in close to Chase. But I think Chase is going to do whatever he wants in this game, kind of like we had Amari Cooper making some big plays last week. I think that's kind of the parallel that you can draw to Chase and his production this week. Well, Devonta Smith is a guy that we go up and down on every week. I think the biggest thing we try to figure out each week is it an A.J. Brown game? Is it a Devonta Smith game? Can both produce in a game? Now, this is definitely an A.J. Brown game because based on where the lineups are at corner, you got Emmanuel Forbes possibly on A.J. Brown. What I think might happen is you might see Forbes on one side and look at a double team on Brown. So a lot of things the Commanders can do here, but when you look at it overall, it's hard for me, Michelle, to drop him out of the top 10 because he's got such high upside and a nice floor every week. You got him down at 19. I have him at 9. It's hard. I think he'll probably finish somewhere right in the middle of that this year, but or this season, and maybe this week as well. So when you look at all that stuff, so AJ Brown is definitely higher for both of us. I have him at 5. You have him at 7. Again, I love Devonta Smith as a player, so I think he's an easy start every week. I just think just be prepared that it might be more of a Brown than a Smith game.
Yeah, so this is the thing with Smith so far. It was 2 nice weeks to start the season for fantasy, but he also has had like 2 weeks with 47 yards and 28 yards. It's just he came down with a touchdown in that first week, so he came through for fantasy. It's so much of, and we haven't even had Dallas Goedert involved whatsoever yet, right? So you haven't even had Dallas Goedert involved, and then he's only seen 5 targets each of the last 2 weeks. And it seems like AJ Brown got upset after week 2. They've been feeding him more. I think Devonta Smith, I think he's good in that wide receiver 2 range. I'm just going to keep him there because any given week, he can have a really nice week, but he can have also a terrible week. I think he's a good wide receiver 2. You plug him in, he gives you upside, but just know, like, it's going to be a very inconsistent year for him. That's just that's just the kind of system he's in. You never know. It's like the 49ers with their wide receivers. You never know which wide receiver or player they're going to use that week.
Yeah, that's a good transition to the 49ers. It's hard to know which one I like better in a given week here. We have Brandon Aiyuk. I have him up there at wide receiver 15. He should be the healthier of the 2 receivers now. So that's what I'm kind of basing it on as well. It's like last week, Aiyuk missed the game with the shoulder. Then Debo got a shot late in the game against the Giants to his ribs. So he's had some issues in practice this week. So it's hard to know week to week. And this week, here's a factor that I'm looking at. Brandon Aiyuk is an Arizona State guy, so maybe he'll get motivated here to have the big game coming back. He's the rested guy. Debo a little bit banged up. They also might be careful with the snaps for both of these guys if they have a big lead, but I really like both of them. You really should play both of them, and I think you're looking at wide receiver 2 minimum here production. I Ayuk a little bit more this week because I think Brock Purdy kind of favors him at home.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. So my thing with Brandon Ayuk is I think George Kittle always destroys the Cardinals, and I think it'll probably be another George Kittle game. I think he might have back-to-back good weeks. And with Ayuk's shoulder, I'm not as certain he's going to be out there getting a ton of snaps and getting a ton of targets. I still think it'll be George Kittle and CMC and Debo. As long as he's good to play, he'll be out there. And the Cardinals defense is randomly getting it done. Like, I don't really understand. They don't have anybody, but like they haven't allowed really any wide receiver to have a good fantasy week so far this year. They held CeeDee Lamb to 10 points in PPR, Terry McLaurin to 5 points. I guess they also played the Giants. It doesn't really count because they don't have a wide receiver, but like they've done well so far. So I don't know. And I don't think that really matters when it comes to the 49ers offense. They're going to get their guys open. It doesn't matter which defense they play. But if I had to choose between the two, it's definitely Debo. And I also like George Kittle. So I think Brandon Ayuk's more of that wide receiver 3 flex option this week.
Yeah, I think it's just hard to take any of these guys out of your lineup just because of the potential. And look, it's going to be like the Eagles offense. It's going to cycle around all these guys. You just have to roll with it. And look, it's going to be some weeks are going to be down, but then some weeks these guys are going to carry you to victory. So that's just the nice thing about having these guys in an offense. It's a good problem to have if you've got these receivers from this offense. So one last player we'll talk about here before we get into our next segment is Puka Nacua. There's been a lot of talk about him. There's some reports positively that Cooper Kupp is just around the corner to return. We'll see if he actually does return coming up next week or beyond that. We'll have to see that. But for now, Puka is still in a good spot. This is a great matchup. We both have him here at number 13. Look, the Colts secondary do not have anybody who can cover him. Kenny Moore has not been good inside. They've been terrible on the outside. So I think this is great. Another big week for Puka and Tutu Atwell, I think, one more time here before we'll just make sure we see Kupp on the practice field before potentially Kupp comes back.
Yeah, you paid up for Puka, right? If you got him off waivers, and he's been fantastic. You keep playing him. I know it wasn't as great of a week last week, but he still had 72 yards. I think this is definitely one of those huge weeks for him, and it's going to become much harder to know whether you trust him or not when Cooper Kupp is back. So enjoy your last week of like not worrying about it. Plug him in, you'll have a great week.
Yeah, we will break down some more wide receivers for you, what to do with Calvin Ridley. We'll look at Gabe Davis, Tank Dell, Cortland Sutton, some good names there that we want to break down for you in our next segment here, and Michael Pittman in that same game. So we'll have a lot there for you as we break down our wide receiver tight end rankings here in Locked On Fantasy Football. But first, we have to hear from one of our sponsors. I cannot say enough about Harry's and their fine razors and all their skincare products. It's just something that is so easy for me. I've subscribed to them in the mail, so it just comes to me. I don't need to worry about it at all. No matter why you shave, Harry's has you covered for the best shave of your life at a price you'll love. That's also something I like. I look at the price. I'm not spending a lot, and I'm taking care of my face well. And from their legendary high-quality razors to skin products such as exfoliating face wash and hydrating lotion, Harry's gives you a premium shave without the premium price tag, and I love that. The starter set you can get is a $13 value for just $3. You can check it out right now at harrys.com/NFL. Includes a 5-blade German-engineered razor, weighted handle, some nice foaming shave gel, and a travel cover for you as well. And you can check it out. You can schedule deliveries as low as $2, half of what you pay for other blades. So it's fantastic. You can also get some creams, wash, and lotions that will keep your skin healthy and hydrated once you shave. Harry's has the highest customer satisfaction in the shaving industry, and they're still offering a no-risk trial. Don't you want to like your shave? No worries. If you don't like it, it's on them. So check it out. Get your best shave ever this fall with Harry's razors and skincare products. Get $13 starter set for just $3 at harrys.com/NFL. That's harrys.com/NFL for a $3 starter set right now. All right, Michelle, it is time to dive into some more guys we want to talk about. Let's wake up early in the morning and to see what Calvin Ridley is going to do here in London. So gets a revenge game against the Falcons. It's a tough matchup a little bit because it's A.J. Terrell, his former teammate, a pretty good corner. But we both think he's going to rebound this week. We have him at wide receiver in 17 and 20, so pretty similar here. But playing a little bit conservative as a wide receiver too, because I think this matchup really favors Christian Kirk.
Yeah, so I might end up moving him down, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I keep keeping Calvin Ridley a little bit too high just because of his huge week one. It makes me nervous that he can go off in any given week. But again, it was against the Colts in week one, and that's been a team we've been targeting because their secondary is pretty weak. He did have two hard matchups for like receivers. The Texans and the Chiefs are actually been pretty hard matchups for them. I think I don't know. This is my
Yeah,
issue.
this is hard.
This could be a revenge game for him, but I am getting nervous. 3 receptions, 2 receptions over the last 2 weeks, but he is still getting the 8-7 targets. I think you plug him in as a wide receiver too. He has high upside, but we also know he has a super low floor. So if you have a really high upside guy in, your wide receiver one spot, if you have a Tyreek Hill or a Jamar Chase, I think that's when you feel good about plugging in Calvin Ridley because you're going to be covered either way. But then Calvin Ridley offers you that huge upside as well in your wide receiver 2 spot.
Yeah, I think for me, I just look at Calvin Ridley and maybe he's pressing a little bit, and we see some drops and some things that he's doing wrong here. He missed getting his feet in bounds, so some mental errors he's making. Maybe he's just putting a little too much pressure on himself, and it could go either way this week, Michelle, right? He could be like, I got to be laser focused. The Falcons wanted to move me. I had some issues there. I want to prove to them they shouldn't have traded me. Or he could say, oh, wait, I got to really show up against the Falcons. We really need me this week. We lost to the Texans last week. So he could press, right? And so it's a hard thing because physically everything is there, but we know that he had to take a break mentally beyond just having the betting suspension there. So let's just hope Calvin Ridley can put it together because I think the opportunities that are there. And I think, again, as we showcase a little bit, Trevor Lawrence, the numbers aren't there, but the opportunities are there, and they have to start turning into execution here for the Jaguars offense. Now, Michael Pittman, he was supposed to play the Calvin Ridley role last year for Matt Ryan in Indianapolis. Now he's off to a better start with the combination of Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew here. I don't think the quarterback matters as much. They've both been looking to him as a lot in this game. Now, the Rams have been very good. We know their coverage. I have them down at wide receiver 25 because of the Rams and their stinginess here, and you have them at wide receiver 16.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Pittman has been absolutely fantastic. If you drafted him, you got such a great value in drafts. And I was super high on him last year. So, I was off of him this year because I got hurt. I got burned, right? But 11, 12, and 11 targets so far. And he actually had his best game with Anthony Richardson in week one with the 97 yards and a touchdown. He's had 2 other nice games after that. But I think you just keep plugging in Michael Pittman, and he's going to be a really solid wide receiver 2 for you every week. And I'm not worried about the Rams matchup at all. We just saw Jamar Chase go off on them. Deebo Samuel had 22 points in week 2 against them. DK Metcalf had nearly 14 points against them in week 1. Like, they're not a team that is like too worrisome about stopping your wide receiver 1. So I think Michael Pittman will have another a solid performance. Like, he's never going to win you weeks, but I think he's a really solid fantasy guy.
Yeah, I probably underestimated him. Maybe I was just off the Colts passing game too much, and just maybe the whole Jonathan Taylor situation made me maybe fade the Colts maybe a little too much, and they proved that they do have a little bit more value here. Now, Gabe Davis, a guy that disappointed, was come through again as a post-hype sleeper this year, and more than that, he's been fantastic here. I am ranked pretty high this week at 19. I think that's pretty aggressive here. And you haven't dropped around a little bit lower this week, Michelle. So I don't see exactly how he slows down too much, but you have him all the way down at 38. So explain yourself, Michelle. I think he's balling, and I'm not sure the Dolphins secondary away from Xavier Howard can slow him down.
So all of his production comes from downfield passes, right? Like last week, he had 1 reception. It was 35 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he got that early too. I was like, wow, I'm going to hit this prize picks pick I had of Gabe Davis of more than 40 yards because he got 35 on 1 catch in about 1 second and a touchdown. But that's all he ended up with. The Dolphins defense under Vic Fangio, they are not allowing downfield passes like at all. Like, it's all like they just let it all be short. So I'm worried this week about Gabe Davis because that's really all where his production comes from. So I think they limit him. They focus on stopping anything deep. And if Gabe Davis doesn't get anything deep, he's going to be pointless for fantasy. I really don't I understand wanting to start him in this matchup because if the Dolphins can score, you expect the Bills to keep up and maybe it could be a high scoring game. But I could see both of these defenses just stepping up a bit and it being, maybe a 20 something to 20 something game. And Gabe Davis doesn't really do much at all.
Yeah, I just look at week 2 where he's really effective. They used him all over the field a little bit more, which is pleasing. That it's not just all about Stephon Diggs. I mean, he's the next guy. I mean, the tight ends are kind of washing out a little bit in terms of kind of cutting into each other's production. We're not seeing a lot of other people involved beyond Diggs and Davis. So I like that. I like it being compressed to a couple guys. So I think he's going to come through well here. But you're right. He's a little bit big play dependent. Some of those guys make us nervous, but I think he's proving slowly that he can be a more complete receiver this season. So I want to trust him every week. I'm getting close there, but yeah, I would like to see it completely happen. Now, one guy we love this week is Tank Dell. I mean, the matchup is pretty darn good against the Steelers. You can move him around in the slot, so that's very helpful here. So we do love him. I have him down at 27. You have him at 24. So I think that's reasonable to like him this week. Now, Cortland Sutton is a guy, however, in that same range. I am at wide receiver 24, and you have him at wide receiver 36 this week. Now, Dell and Sutton, I mean, it looks like you would play Dell over Sutton. I might actually play, I think, both of them, but I really like Sutton's matchup this week in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I love both matchups, right? The Steelers have they've gotten destroyed by wide receivers. So I think this is a great matchup for Dell, and he's at least put up back-to-back 20-point weeks in his second and third NFL game. Cortland Sutton hasn't had a 20 fantasy point game with Russell Wilson yet. Like they lost by 50 points, and he's like, his great game was putting up 19 fantasy points because and with a touchdown as well. So Cortland Sutton, just one of those guys that offers no upside for me, and his floor is so incredibly low. I mean, we see that with Russell, and I have zero desire to jump back into the well with Sutton. If he has a second straight good game, maybe I'll jump on board, but I need to see it twice.
Yeah, I actually like Sutton this week because of a couple developments. This secondary, they've got one really good corner, Tyreek Stevenson. He's a rookie, and he's the guy that would be playing across from that good corner, Jalen Johnson. Both of those guys could be out in this game, and that's going to be good for Cortland Sutton's size. Johnson's a slightly bigger corner, so if he's out, that's going to help a lot. There's no pass rush for the Bears, so Russell Wilson's going to be looking. He's going to find some things downfield this week. So Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, I think the matchup is just too good if those corners are out, where I think you have to invest a lot in the Broncos. So again, a lot of the Broncos' faith, Michelle, is not in the Broncos. It's more the lack of faith completely in the Bears. And I don't find that disturbing at all because they're really not a very good team here anywhere defensively. So eat them up, enjoy it. The Broncos put up some numbers this week. Now, Jakobi Meyers has quietly had a very nice start. I know he missed one game with a concussion, so really it's only 2 games. But yeah, he's getting involved. I mean, Adams is just eating and just taking over everything here for the Raiders. But there's no really Hunter Renfrow. They're not really working in the tight ends at all. And now he gets the Chargers matchup this week, and they're just getting killed. So I think he's a very strong play this week again, and I think it's going to continue. I think he knows this offense really well, obviously from his days at the Patriots. I'm at 30. I'm being conservative there because, again, I don't think you have a huge upside. You have him, though. You're starting to bump him up, so I like to see that at 21.
Yeah, I think he's one of the safest plays you can put into your lineup as long as Jimmy Garoppolo is playing. Like, I'll move him down a little bit if it's Aiden O'Connell. He did look good in the preseason, but I don't know. We don't know how much Aiden O'Connell would target him. We know Jimmy Garoppolo loves him, right? 10 and 12 targets over his 2 games. And the Chargers, like you brought up, they're allowing by far the most fantasy points to wide receivers, allowing over 17 yards per reception to wide receivers this year. Like, that is so insanely bad. So Jakobi Meyers is just an awesome play. I really hope Jimmy Garoppolo plays so we can feel better about that. But I think he's a guy that you definitely want in your lineups. But Vinny, one guy, I don't know if I can put in my lineups because I don't know what to do. It's Garrett Wilson. We both are extremely low on him this week, wide receiver 34 and wide receiver 35. He gets the Chiefs, really hard matchup. And Zach Wilson's still the quarterback. I think this is Zach Wilson's probably last week as a Jets starting quarterback. But can you play him this week?
I don't want to play him. I'm doing my best not to play him. I'm trying to think, do I even put, for example, do I put a Romeo Doubs in this game tonight? I might do it. I mean, that's the thing is I'm choosing between Gabe Davis, Romeo Doubs, and Garrett Wilson. And Davis and Doubs are looking a lot better to me right now based on how their quarterbacks are playing. So it's a tough one. I'm trying to get to a point where I don't have to force Garrett Wilson in the lineup, that I can play him as a matchup-based flex. And it's really sad. I mean, I know in one league I prioritized Olave, and I should have done this in this other league, and I would have been happier. But Michelle, this is why I didn't have the booming intro. Looking at Garrett Wilson in my lineup, it's just very sad, and I don't know what we can do about it. So hopefully
Trevor Siemian will be the savior starting in week 5.
Yeah, let's hope so. Something will happen here, but we do have some exciting tight end rankings, and I'm sure that we'll agree on a lot of these guys this week, Michelle. I think in our final segment.
Yeah, exciting is probably a reach, right? The tight ends right now are discussing, but we'll try to help you out, figure out which tight ends to play this week if you're struggling. But first, let's talk about another one of our sponsors. Do you love daily fantasy sports? You should try out Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. How does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. At Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. Prize Picks adds a ton of excitement to the sports viewing experience. Players can choose from a vast selection of sports and stat types not offered anywhere else. They can even pick in-game projections after a game has started, which includes halves, quarters, periods, and more. Vinnie and I will be giving our favorite picks of the week on tomorrow's show. I think we went 5 for 6 last week. I missed on my Gabe Davis, but we're going to try to hit 6 for 6. So make sure you don't miss out on that. To sign up for Prize Picks, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use LockedOn NFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com, LockedOn NFL, and use promo code LockedOn NFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Vinny. Tight ends, disgusting. Like, that's my word for them right now. If you drafted TJ Hockenson, you were thrilled. Absolutely thrilled that you sped up on him because he's been nothing but fantastic. Obviously, if you have Travis Kelce, you're happy. I think this week, George Kittle's a good play again against the Cardinals. I think Darren Waller's a good play against the Giants. But, Vinny, what is happening with Mark Andrews? And he gets a terrible matchup. Would you ever consider sitting Mark Andrews this week?
I would. Actually, I'm sitting him in a way because I'm trading him away. Because I have Sam Laporta in that league. So I am just shipping him out. I'm getting some running back help and trying to jump on it when I can. And look, I'm not feeling Mark Andrews potentially can even outscore Sam Laporta this year. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I think when you look at that Ravens offense, I think it's a bit of a square peg and round hole. They're trying to figure out this passing offense. It hasn't really clicked everywhere. I mean, you're looking at Lamar. He's not handling it well. Zay Flowers, the production was underwhelming last week because of Lamar. People are just taking away Mark Andrews and say, look, work to these receivers. We don't mind if Nelson Aguilar or Zay Flowers or someone else beats us. We're going to take Andrews out of the game. And what's also happening is they're considering more that their other tight ends are getting in the mix. Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, they like these guys. So maybe a bit of a transition going on. And again, if you're pivoting a little bit more to wide receiver usage and not as just a security blanket dependent on Andrews. Yeah, it's hard to play him. And the Browns matchup is brutal. They've allowed next to nothing to tight ends this week. So I still think you have to play him in this awful tight end landscape unless you have a Sam Laporta on your team like I do and you can just make that pivot. But yeah, I just can't do that. And Michelle, I want to clean myself from Mark Andrews. And I do want to talk more about Sam Laporta and Luke Musgrave in Thursday night's game here. So I like both of them a lot this week. I just look at what's going on with the Packers. There's no Devondre Campbell. He can be pretty good in coverage against tight ends. So That's good for Laporta. They're very good on the outside. Jair Alexander should return, so things should be in the inside a lot with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. On the other side, the Lions are very good in the slot here with Brian Branch, but they're not good in tight end coverage because C.J. Gardner-Johnson's not on the field. So couple of key injuries. This is what you have to look at too as well. And the middle of the field is going to be open when the outside is playing well. And the Lions are also playing pretty good at corner. So really opens up the middle of the field. You got two quarterbacks that like to throw to the tight end. I think you see Luke Musgrave make a big play this week and put up some numbers and is playable as a top tight end this week. And Sam Laporta comes through again where he's at. I mean, we both have him really high this week. I have him at 4, you have him at 5. I think he's an every week play. Both of them come through. Musgrave could be headed that way soon in this offense as well.
Yeah, Sam Laporta is an every week play at this point. He's going to disappoint like every tight end besides Travis Kelce does in some given weeks. But you just keep plugging him in every week. He's being utilized. He's getting the targets. Luke Musgrave, I love this week. And he's actually a guy I would consider playing over Mark Andrews. You talked about how hard that Browns matchup is. The Browns have allowed 26 total receiving yards to all tight ends this season. 26. That is crazy. And then you look at the Lions, they have allowed a league high 25 receptions and 263 receiving yards to tight ends. And that's with them not even playing Travis Kelce in week 1. So that number could even be worse. But we saw last week, Luke Musgrave put up 10.9 PPR points against the Saints, who are the hardest defense against tight ends since the start of last year. So I think if you could do it in that matchup, which it should have been a way bigger game, actually, because Jordan Love just missed him on a wide open touchdown. I really like he's playing all the snaps. I think this is a fantastic matchup. And I mean, goodness, I know we'll be talking about Kyle Pitts here, but imagine if Kyle Pitts ever put up 10.9 points in PPR, you guys would be ecstatic. You guys would be crying for joy.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about Luke Musgrave is he had a big play that just missed between him and Jordan Love that would have gone for like 60 yards and a potential touchdown. So they're just missing, but he's a big play tight end. There's a big play opportunity for him. And then don't forget the Lions really struggled against the Seahawks trio of tight ends just a couple weeks ago. So they can get burned if a team is going to target the tight end quite a bit here. So something to look at there in this matchup. Now, it's the Kyle Pitts update of the week. Why does Vinnie like Kyle Pitts and is going to keep putting him in a position to succeed? I have him at number 10 this week. I think
over Luke
I'm going to say this. Yes, I do, because again, Luke Musgrave a little bit. I don't know. I think I'm just one of those guys that Kyle Pitts, like last year, we just kept playing him down the line, and there's a chance that you may not have both these guys. I don't know, but yeah, if you have Musgrave, I think you can consider him, but you have him at 14, so you don't have him too far down for me.
I mean, if you're tight on 14 on the week, you had a pretty atrocious week.
Yeah, I mean, well, in this landscape, he probably had 5 catches for 20 yards, and that was probably good for that ranking. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of plays being missed here as well. And look, it is what it is, and you can't say, okay, the opportunities are there, but there's not an execution. I think part of it is Pitts. Part of it is Arthur Smith. Part of it is Desmond Ridder. So maybe the key here overall is Taylor Heinicke coming in. We know what he did a little bit for those receivers in Washington. They were viable, right? You just want a facilitator for these good targets. And I feel like Zach Wilson's not doing that. Desmond Ridder's not doing that. Just get the ball in the hands of the guys who can make plays and do it efficiently. Just figure out how to do it. So, look, I have some hope for him this week. I mean, Jaguars are pretty good at corner, so I think this is going to be tough for Drake London. So if there's going to be some targets, Desmond Ridder's got to throw to Kyle Pitts. So I think I'm just afraid, again, it's probably just the FOMO of if he has the 2 touchdown game and the breakout, he's not going to be in the lineup for a lot of people. And again, I'm just going to keep doing this, and then maybe you'll see Kyle Pitts just drop into the 20s somewhere, and I'll bury him next week if he doesn't come through.
Yeah, when you say 2 touchdown game, I don't think he's ever had. Does he even have 2 career touchdowns? What to do with Dallas? What to do with Dallas Goedert? Because he's another big name. He was really consistent last year. Like the one thing he had was consistency. Wow, I'm struggling with that word. Last year, and then all of a sudden this year, I mean, he's still got the targets each of the last 2 weeks, but it turned into 22 yards and 41 yards. again, still we're down on Dallas Goedert, right, with 5 for 41, and that was considered a great game for Kyle Pitts last week. So I still think Goddard's a playable guy, but he gets a hard matchup against the Commanders. They're a pretty good team against tight ends. Last year against the Commanders, he was held to 26 yards and 23 yards, although he did get into the end zone both games. I think that's pretty much where you're at right now with Dallas Goedert. It's touchdown or bust for him, especially in this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this quite a bit when we were breaking down players in that middle tier of tight ends. Like, I think we pretty much said, go Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, target Sam Laporta or Luke Musgrave late. Try to avoid that middle of tight ends where you're not getting that good value. And even we went deeper. Dalton Schultz has been just a waste here. We thought he could do a little bit more, but we also didn't expect those wide receivers to be involved as much. But like the David Njoku tier, Goddard, Pitts, that was a terrible tier to go after with tight ends. It was the same adage, right? Go for the early ones, whether it's Kelce or Hawkinson. Look for the sleepers late, Hunter Henry's, Laporta, all those guys that have been doing well, and avoid that just muddled middle. And this is what's burning you right now. I see a lot of teams struggling because they went for one of these tight ends. Now, the teams I see doing real well are with the late tight ends or have Kelce or Hawkinson on their team. So I would maybe, if I'm struggling at tight end, I would try to make a move here because I think you can find replacements at wide receiver and running back and things are going to happen. But if you have a shot to somehow package picks or make a pick for a top tight end, do it because it's just pretty ugly out there. And I some of these names I just can't say, like Cole Kmet. If you want to, David Njoku. I mean, we're forcing Taysom Hill into the conversation. It's just too much, Michelle. I don't know. Evan Ingram, I think he's looking like awesome right now.
Yeah.
And he's not
I mean,
he's
one of the most consistent, like he's one of the guys, if you drafted in the middle of your draft, you're happy with. He's doing what you drafted him to do.
Yeah.
Would you play Luke Musgrave tonight over Dallas Goedert?
I think if I'm going for upside, and let me just say that Musgrave is a big play tight end, so he's a bit boomer bust. So keep that in mind with him. Like he needs those big plays to hit. If he had a nice game anyway last week, but if he had that play, he would have had a fantastic game and probably finished in the top tier tight end. So just keep in mind he is a rookie, and sometimes that's a little bit volatile here. And I think the matchup says everything for Musgrave. I just don't know if it's going to go boom here. I mean, but again, if you can get 6 for 40, it seems like a good game here for your tight end, and it's sad. But this is why, again, you get those good tight end values to get a better return on your investment, and we'll see. I think it'll be interesting to see if we have any tight ends in our DFS list that can really come through our price picks. That's what we'll do there for you tomorrow, every day. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We'll close the week looking at DFS and make our price picks the week. As Michelle said, we did really well last week, so you want to tune into that, put all this stuff in a blender we've talked about with the running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends, and spit out some good DFS things for you tomorrow. So that's how we're going to end the week here on Locked On Fantasy Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.